Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Real Talk with Coach Sherry. And this channel is about workforce development, career readiness, entrepreneurship, and of course, real life, real issues, and real talk. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, I invite you now to hit the subscribe button and the bell for notification of when I post new videos. If you feel this video is a message that someone in your circle needs to hear, please be sure to share. Please like and comment. Let me know what are your thoughts around this topic, and if you have been a caregiver before, or if you're still a caregiver. Yesterday I had posted a video and I let you know that in addition to all things I want to have my YouTube channel to be part of my legacy. I want to leave information on things that I've experienced on here so my future generations to come can look back during this time and know who I am, what I was all about, what our family was like, what our businesses were like. And this way I'm leaving my thumbprint. And I wanted to bring you along with me. And this week is the 10th anniversary of my mother's passing. She lived with ALS and I was her primary caregiver. And I created a blog around the time when I was caring for her because everything was so vivid and I knew that this assignment was so big, I needed to have it documented. So I do have a blog out there called ALS Caregiver on WordPress, but in addition to it being written, I am going to be reading the blogs of her last 6 days. So yesterday I read one. It wasn't part of the last 6 days. It kind of gave an overview of the experience, but today starts the first day of her last 6 days. And I wanted to share this journey with you. Now, I also told you yesterday that when I wrote my blogs, I never read them again. I just put them out there and they have been blessing people all over the world who are also caregivers of loved ones who are living with ALS. So if the stories are a little bit all over the place, I apologize in advance. This is my first time reading them over. And I decided that this would be a great moment to revisit and to remember and reflect on those last 6 days. So thank you so much for coming with me and being here to support me through this. Last 6 days living with ALS. You never know how much longer, only God knows. You never know what path it will take you on your journey. Only God knows. Diagnosed with ALS in October 2008, we had no idea which path ALS would take us on. But my mother relied on God because He knew. Last year, on August 25th, 2010, we had no idea that would be the last 6 days living with ALS. The days leading up to the 25th were filled with restless moments. My mother was very uncomfortable, and no matter what we did, what we purchased, she could not be comforted. Waking up on the 25th, I was mentally and physically exhausted. My days were filled with making her comfortable and remaining by her side for 15 months. She got to the place where she didn't want to be left in a room alone for no amount of time. Life became very challenging. I went into her room that morning around 8:30 a.m. and my father was reading devotion with her at her bedside. She was awake, and as I was mixing her morning medication together, preparing to administer them to her in her feeding tube, I heard her speak assist machine tell him to have a blessed day. I continued to mix her meds, and I went over to her and said good morning. She gave me a slight smile, and after flushing her meds through, I proceeded in preparing her for her morning feed. While the feed was going through, I went into the kitchen, which was in the very next room. I stood in the doorway so that she could see me, but I spoke to my husband, who was in the kitchen juicing fruits and vegetables. I motioned for my husband to come in my mother's room while I continued to get her prepared for the day. It was a beautiful day. Not too hot, not too sunny. I was trying to get her ready early enough so that I would be able to walk outside with her before it got too warm. So he came in her room, and I continued with her by checking her blood sugar levels and blood pressure. My husband was happy and asked her if she would like some of the juice that he was making. She never responded, but proceeded in typing in her speak assist machine, talking about our dog Angel, who we got a few months prior. She was telling him that she thought we should get Angel a fenced area to keep her safe. My husband told her that he would definitely look into that and asked, did she think we should get one like the neighbors had for their dog? She shook her head yes. While she was speaking with my husband, I noticed that her face was shiny. I tried to remember if I had put Vaseline on her face the night before, but I couldn't recall. Then I thought it wasn't that warm in the room, so I wondered why she looked so moist. After my husband returned to the kitchen, I proceeded in brushing her teeth. While brushing her teeth, she kept trying to type something about my son's knee. It was getting in the way of what I was doing to prepare her for the day, so I asked her, was it important for her to tell me now, or could she wait until I got her situated for the day, dressed and in her chair? She thought about it for a second and shook her head, meaning she would tell me once we got situated. As I continued to brush her teeth, I noticed that when she swished the water in her mouth, she appeared to be listening to the inside of her body. She paused and didn't really rinse the water around. I went to suction the water out and she barely opened her mouth because she appeared to be listening intently to what was going on in her body. I gave her more water for one more rinse. She took it, but still looked like she was listening. I suctioned the water out and wiped her mouth. She looked up at me and I just smiled down and said, I'm going to get your washcloth now. I turned to go into the bathroom, which is an in-suite bathroom. I cleaned her toothbrush and rinsed out the cup. I kept the water on to get warm, so I selected a washcloth. I put the water on the washcloth and rinsed it out. I turned to go back to my mother, and as I approached her in the bed, I noticed that she was sleeping. I started to wash her face anyway, but I hesitated because she looked so comfortable and peaceful. She had been very restless and we couldn't find a comfortable spot for her, so I was glad to see her resting so effortlessly, finally. So I touched her arm and told her that I would let her rest for a while longer before getting her up. It appeared to me that she slightly shook her head yes. So I finished cleaning her bathroom and I was going to go sit in another part of the house just to gather my thoughts, but instead I brought my paperwork into her room and settled in the recliner chair so that I would be in position when she woke up. About 10 minutes passed when Beverly, who is the woman that is sort of kind of a nurse that we finally got to help out an hour a day for the past month, came in. Beverly was a godsend, even if she only came for 1 hour. I had given up hope of ever being able to go back to my home in Charlotte, North Carolina, because we hadn't been able to find anyone who was willing to learn how to operate my mother's ventilator so that I could go back to my original solid home, even for a day, which was 4 hours one way. It would have been wonderful, but I just had to resolve that it was what it was. At any rate, Beverly came in. She was pretty sporadic at best with the days that she did come. Every time she came, I was very happy to see her. As she bounced in, we were talking, and I was telling her about the schedule that I had made for her moving forward, and we were talking and laughing, and in the meantime, I kept glancing over at my mother. I didn't want to feel what I felt, but her peacefulness reminded me of the day after Mother's Day in May 2009, when I was with her when she went into respiratory failure, and I thought she was just sleeping. I wouldn't allow myself to believe that was happening again because her ventilator wasn't beeping out of order. So she must be all right, right? My mother is a very light sleeper. Beverly has a strong voice that will wake up just about anyone. The entire time that Beverly and I were talking, my mother never stirred. After about 5 minutes or so, I got up, not to alarm anyone, but I wanted to try and wake my mother up. I told Beverly that she had been tired and I was letting her rest, but that I was going to get her up while she was there. So I went and got her washcloth, put warm water on it again, went over to her and wiped her face as I gently told her that Beverly was there. Nothing. Beverly came over and started saying her name. Mrs. Barnes, it's Beverly. Nothing. Beverly and I glanced at each other, and I could see the panic start to build up in her eyes. So I tried to stay reassuring to her and say, she's overtired, she's okay. Then I pulled back her covers, thinking the rush of cool air would stir her. Nothing. That's when I completely realized this was May 2009 all over again. I looked at Beverly and said as calmly as I could, "This is it." I walked out of the room, and somehow my father was standing just outside the door doing something busy, oblivious to what was going on. I told him, "I think this is it for Mom," and kept walking to the other side of the house where I found my husband. Seeing him, tears started pouring from my eyes, and I told him, "It's my mother." He had just found out that his father was having a serious relapse with his prostate cancer, and he just communicated with my mother. So in his mind, he thought I said, "It's your father." He jolted upright and said, "What?" That's when I repeated that it's my mother. He ran to her room, and I called my cousin Geraldine, who lives nearby, to come, and I dialed 911. When 911 answered, I couldn't speak. I didn't know the words to say. Luckily, when my mother first got diagnosed with ALS, we contacted the emergency system and let them know that if someone called from this house and didn't say anything, to send someone, because it could be my mother who was losing the ability to speak. The operator told me they were sending someone over. I went into my mother's room and asked Beverly to step outside because by now, she was hysterical. Within minutes, the emergency crew came and along with me rushed my mother to the ER. We got to the ER and the staff there was very familiar with us. I had taken my mother there every month for 8 months and the last time was just a few days ago because a nurse would not come to assist me in my mother's care. I had to take her to the ER every month to have her catheter changed. That's a whole nother vlog. Whew. Since we were just there a few days prior, the staff was all like, "What's going on?" I explained what had happened. The respiratory therapist on staff spoke to me because he was surprised that her ventilator didn't respond. I asked the doctor to please have her transferred to MCV, which is in Richmond. They said they had to figure out to some extent what was going on before they could transfer her. So I made my calls to the staff that I knew in Richmond to let them know what was going on and to try to get the transfer approved before the request was set in. I went over their head. That's what you have to do. Within 30 minutes after several tests, they ruled that my mother had had a heart attack and a stroke, and that they were transferring her via helicopter to Richmond. As I looked at my mother lying motionless on the ER table, I felt like she was just there in body. You never know what the end will be, but it is always unexpected. Unfortunately, I was not able to go in the helicopter with her, so my husband and I stood near the helipad. My husband, my dad, and I, as they loaded her in and ascended. As they ascended, I remember looking up, and my husband pointed and said, "Sherry, look." One of the medics had the door slightly opened, and he gave us the thumbs up sign. Typically, I wouldn't be able to see that because my eyesight is awful, but I was able to see that. It was as if that was a sign from God, like he was saying, "I got her. She is in good hands." When the helicopter reached their altitude and proceeded to go forward, I felt like my mother's spirit kept ascending to heaven. I didn't feel sorrow, pain, or anything really. I was very much rooted to that spot, as if a rare bird that I had in my care was just released. The three of us walked away as if we were leaving a gravesite. No one had any words to say or share. This was all new territory for us. I went home to gather my belongings because my plan was to stay in the hospital with my mother until we got to the hospital, and the nurse coordinator, Kelva, whom helped us get a company to even provide a ventilator in our home 15 months prior, was there at my mother's bedside. I could see in her eyes that she knew there was not going to be a miracle this time. Kelva and I were soul sisters of sorts. We both don't understand what the word no means, and we were born on the same day, 10 years apart. What an advocate team we made on my mother's behalf, I'm trying to tell you. Oh, as I looked at my mother, even though scientifically she was still with us, I felt like her spirit had left. I really did. Her sleep looked eternal. After a while, everyone left, and it was just me and her. We've been here before, the two of us together. In the past, I used to make light of it and say, "Mom, we are having a wonderful slumber party, but it's no fair because you have the bed and I have this recliner." That would always make her smile. Not this time. This time, it felt eerily quiet. I didn't know what to expect, but what I did know is that God had groomed me for this very moment. I didn't know what kind of decisions that I would have to make, but I knew they were going to be big girl decisions. And I was just prayerful that whatever they were to be, that I would make the right ones. That night was unlike the other stays that we had in the hospital with the nurses in and out all night. You know how it is when you stay in the hospital. Even when they changed shifts, they didn't really disturb us. It was very strange. This was day 1 of the last 6 days of living with ALS. Thank you for being here on this journey with me, reliving, rehashing, recapping the things that occurred during my mother's last 6 days of living with ALS. So this is day 1. Stay tuned, and tomorrow I will be sharing with you the experiences we had on day 2. Be sure to leave a comment and please let me know what your thoughts are on this day 1. Thank you so much for tuning in and rocking with me. This has been Real Talk with Coach Sherry.